Welcome to Beware Mysterious Mark. This 10-part series is a harrowing, true account of elder financial abuse. Our goal is to expose how these schemes work, reveal the warning signs, and help you stop it before it happens to someone you love. So listen closely. Awareness is your first line of defense. In episode 1, we met the Coopers, Bert, Diane, adult daughter Brooke, and daughter-in-law Nancy. A pretty happy family. Until Diane died, and Bert's friend, Mark Marshall, began creating distrust. And now, here's our storyteller, Nancy Miles, with episode 2, titled, I'd Be Honored to Change Your Dad's Nappies.
In March of 2019, Brooke returned from a devastating visit with her dad. It took a few minutes before she was able to speak sensibly. Though she hadn't recorded this conversation, it was instantly seared into her brain.
Dad just dove right in, saying,
Well, this is a little embarrassing. Nancy's brothers and sisters, it's hopeless. I can't remember names, but I don't really like them. Well, I like some of them, but the one, who works in the government? Don't really care for her. Fella she's with, he's a bit odd. And doesn't another of the girls have some, problems? Can't get along with the others. I don't like that. And, well, the mum. Well, nice enough, I suppose, but I didn't care for her. Okay, let's put it this way. I don't want any of them to inherit my money. I don't want that.
Wait a second here, Brooke. What the hell? What the hell? Your dad suddenly doesn't like my family? He didn't like my mom? My mom, for crying out loud! I've helped out your parents for years. We fed and entertained that old fart for years, and twice a week while Mum lived here. She was so good to him.
I know. Couldn't believe what Dad was saying. Your mom was so fun, fascinating, and interested in everything. She politely listened to Dad's same stories over and over, yet he never asked her anything about her own life.
It was a heck of a lot more interesting than his, that's for sure, and a whole lot more productive.
Oh, Dad just droned on. When he finally stopped, I couldn't get out of the house fast enough. Not angry, but hurt. He didn't seem to have a clue how upset I was.
Well, I'm friggin' well gonna tell him how upset I am. I'm going over right now.
No. Please, Nancy, don't go. It won't help. Please. It'll make things worse.
But I can't just let him...
Please, no.
Reluctantly, I agreed. Brooke decided a couple of days later to go see her dad. She wanted to know how her dad really felt about me, since he hadn't mentioned me once. I didn't believe this a good idea. I didn't want Bert to hurt her again. Brooke and her dad were both calm when she arrived, but it didn't take Bert long to complain about me.
Well, Nancy never really worked, did she?
What? Sure she did. She was in the federal government for 18 years. In the 22 years since you've been here, she's helped to do everything around the house. Things I couldn't do. Planting stuff, pruning, driving you to the dump, cleaning the roof, windows, selling your truck canopy, watering, finding a car Mum could get into, and on and on. She's always cheerful. She's always ready to help. My God, Dad. She was just like your second daughter.
Oh, well, let me put it this way. After the government, what did she do?
She worked as a consultant. She wrote 10 novels, had a successful career in the library. If you don't mind me saying so, you were sure happy to always take her help and her cooking.
But she never really worked, did she? A proper job is 9 to 5.
Crazy stuff, resulting in the worst argument Brooke and her dad ever had. She actually shouted at him, first time ever, because he seemed so far removed from reality. We spent the next month puzzling over Bert's lack of memory and mystifying behavior towards Brooke. The next day, Brooke apologized to her dad both in writing and in voicemail. She never received an acknowledgement. I realized I was now a problem and no longer part of the Cooper family. It really stung, but more importantly, it worried me. Had Bert disliked me all these decades? I couldn't believe it. I can prove Bert actually cared for me. Except for Diane and Brooke, I was the only other beneficiary in his will of 2014. I had always helped Bert, doing chores, really of any typical son-in-law, except, of course, I wasn't one. And that's where Mark Marshall found a crack between Bert and me, and began to exploit it. We decided Bert required professional attention, and Brooke finally called the family doctor a month later. Fortunately, all three Coopers and I had the same GP, Dr. Cooper, and she is terrific. Brooke had been taking her parents to their doctor's appointments for years, so when she saw Dr. Cooper a few days later, she filled her in.
It was like Dad was reading the weather report. He was knocking down all of Nancy's family in this matter-of-fact tone. When he stopped, he was unaware I was upset. In fact, he asked me to read his mail as if everything was hunky-dory. I just left. But I went back 2 days later. He was calm, pleasant. Then I asked him about Nancy. It ended in a disastrous argument.
Is that typical of your life now with your dad?
Well, no. We've had arguments, but never that intense. And never about Nancy and her family. Normally I just walk away, but this time I shouted at him. I'm worried about Dad. All he remembers about this 2-day event was that I marched in and shouted at him. No memory of all the complaints he had about Nancy's family.
Tell me more about his memory issues.
Oh, right. Well, I had put his name on a deed to the family home after Mom died.
Oh, your dad's name wasn't already there?
No, it's something we joked about. You see, years ago, Mom thought since she was older, she would die first, and Dad might remarry someone with children. Then I'd lose the family home. As a consequence, my parents together decided to put Mom's and my names on the deed when they bought this house in 1996.
Makes sense.
So a month ago, Dad was surprised when I told him we had to go and add his name to the house insurance policy. He had absolutely no idea. He's forgotten he was now half owner of the house, even though I just gave it to him 4 months ago. Could his forgetting that just be grief or stress or...
Well, his memory's poor, but tell me, have there been other specific things you've noticed?
Well, he's all over the place, saying stuff I've never heard before.
Like what?
Just a few days ago, he said he was afraid Nancy would inherit my POA and would put him in a home. That's just nuts. He's known Nancy for over 40 years. And a couple of months ago, Dad said he thought it was wrong of our lawyer to call us in so soon after Mom's death. I explained why we needed to know the first steps to begin to wind up Mom's affairs. But then he asked, "Oh, well, why did you take all the financial papers away?" I didn't know what he was talking about. Dad used to trust me implicitly. He would never have asked that before. It feels like Mark's involved.
Who's Mark?
Well, he's the other reason I'm here. Mark's a newish friend of Dad's, known each other for about 5 years. He's with Dad every day since Dad met him. I really don't care for him. And Mom didn't like him either. He's intrusive. Dad talks about him endlessly. They do have a lot in common, but Dad's definitely obsessed with him. It's bizarre. Just a couple of days ago, Dad wanted me to sell my share of our family home to him, so Mark and Donna could live with him and look after him. But Mark insists on a 10-year rent-free guarantee.
What? Well, that's over the top. What did you say?
I told him that's a big deal. just 6 months after Mom died, and they're already planning to make huge changes to the house. I'm just not ready to sell my remaining half of Poplar Hill.
There's a lot going on here, Brooke. Your dad shouldn't be making major changes like that just after your mom died. I've noticed a few things myself, and I'm developing some concerns about him.
Is it possible he's had a TIA?
A small stroke? Anything's possible at his age. In light of what you've told me, I'm going to schedule a geriatric assessment.
What does that involve?
A CT scan of his 95-year-old brain, a visit to each of you by a social worker, and an occupational therapist will give your dad some tests and we'll arrange for him to see a geriatric psychiatrist.
Nothing could have prepared us for Mark's visit a few days later. He dropped by the day before, saying he could help Brooke and her dad get along following the argument. So we agreed to meet in our garden. He began by telling us what a temper Bert had, like a volcano, and how he handles him by getting him to count to 10. But then Mark switches to the real reason he's here.
Now, Poplar Hill was valued at $946,000 last year. It's dropping now, only $871. If you sell to your dad right now, you could buy it back later for less.
Oh, Mark, my dad isn't some real estate deal.
Well, he won't go into a retirement home, and we all get along so well. I live in like my father. I'd be so honored to change his nappies, you know? Nobody could give him better care. Donna, she tickles him, cuddles him, and he giggles.
Okay. Can you give us some details of your plan to move in?
Oh, well, we'd share and take care of everything for Albert. We'll live in the front half, take a one-bedroom and a living room and a dining room, and your dad will have his own bed and bath, plus the privacy of his family room. We'll share the kitchen, and Donna will make all the meals.
What about the 10-year rent-free guarantee?
What about it?
Dad said you needed this guarantee in order to move in with him.
Well, I have a sweet deal where I am, and I'm a meticulous tenant. Couldn't leave without an incentive. Think the guarantee's reasonable.
Give me a break, man. Oh, by the way, you have a 10-year rent-free guarantee where you are?
I didn't expect the Spanish Inquisition.
Oh, really, Mark? Can't handle a few questions from a couple of women? That was 90 minutes we both wished we could get back. Mark spent most of the time boasting about his many accomplishments, including being a BC prosecutor for 10 years. We later checked out his legal credentials. Nada. This brazen prosecutor lie became a major issue between Bert, Mark, and Brooke. But none of that really mattered to Brooke. She was shocked that Mark knew the exact assessment value of their family home. What kind of friend ferrets that out? And surprised to learn that Mark's been lying to her dad for years about the precariousness of his rental situation. Mark had just told us about the sweet deal he had now and needing a 10-year rent-free guarantee before giving it up. Brooke and I had seen the con man in close action and were very disturbed. A month or two before Diane died, Bert met and became close to a fella named Chris. He's about Brooke's age. Chris owned a small local business. Over time, Bert began to drop in and chat. Chris enjoyed Bert's company so much, he'd take him to breakfast now and again. Brooke and I started to wonder about Chris. Then one day, when Bert was rattling on, he mentioned something interesting.
I'll never say Mark's the be-all and end-all of friends. He thinks of me as his father. But I like and respect Chris better as a friend.
This prompted Brooke to meet this Chris guy. We were a little wary since we didn't know how Chris felt about Mark. Maybe they were best buds? Luckily, at their first meeting, when Brooke asked if he knew Mark, Chris was clearly not a fan. Thank God. Turns out Brooke and Chris had a lot of concerns in common. They quickly became friends, and Brooke visited him regularly. Some weeks later, Chris said,
"Got to tell you something odd. I don't want to make too much of it, but this guy Mark finds a way to drop in 5 minutes after your dad arrives. Every time. Weird, huh? Not a coincidence. So I'm wondering, is this guy following your dad?"
Oh, that's kind of creepy.
Not only that, the guy seems to be involved in a lot of your dad's personal stuff. Just the other day, your dad dropped in, asked my opinion about making a handwritten will. I was stunned. When I asked what he was talking about, he said it was Mark's suggestion.
What? A handwritten will? That's just ridiculous. We've got a great family lawyer, plus Dad's hands shake so badly he hasn't been able to write for 20 years.
I know, I've seen that. But don't worry. I told Bert it was a crazy idea and not to do it.
Oh, thanks, Chris. That Mark, he's everywhere.
Yeah. Brooke, there's something else you need to know.
Okay.
The way Mark and your dad always talked about you, I expected you to have horns.
Horns? Wow. Mind if I ask what they said?
Well, Mark would always start the conversation, but your dad would chime in. They complained mostly that you were difficult to deal with. But I know you're nothing like that.
The conversation with Chris floored Brooke and me once I heard it. To know that Mark was bad-mouthing Brooke in front of others and that her dad was a willing participant hurt. After 71 years of marriage, 95-year-old Bert has lost his life partner, and Brooke, their only child, was 68 and has known and enjoyed all her dad's friends over the last 50-plus years. And now Bert says,
We start a whole new thing, a little bit separate. I don't feel the need to be fatherly to you or talk about the past. It's so much emotion. I've been through enough. I think it's best. You have your friends, I have mine.
I offer the following tidbits so you understand how much the Coopers functioned as a faithful family unit. Pretty well everything was organized from that one perspective. Trust was absolute, without the need of legal documents or even handshakes. Finances and assets shared. So Bert keeping secrets from Brooke, just like he had with her mum in her last years, indicates the depth of his betrayal. Brooke's family life was so different from mine. I come from a large brood. Chaos and noise ruled the day. We were close, but really a multitude of lives were going on simultaneously, so it wasn't unusual to be out of the loop on many family discussions. In contrast, Brooke only had her parents. It must have been quiet and lonely. But then, what about that parental attention? Brooke lived at home up to her 26th year while completing a master's degree and spent tons of time with her parents. I recall being amazed at how they discussed stuff as a tight group. All opinions respected. Her dad was a stockbroker, and her mum ran a small home-based import business. But the family hobby was real estate. The Coopers loved looking at houses. Brooke and her dad had fallen into a nice routine of going to a local restaurant for brekkie. Suddenly, her dad's busy. We don't think anything of it, at first, but it keeps happening. At one point, her dad let slip he'd been going to the same restaurant with Mark. Never once invited Brooke. And then there were no more Cooper breakfasts. Another successful Mark maneuver to put distance between father and daughter. Well, this may seem harmless, but we learned that isolating the target like this from family and friends is a classic strategy in undue influence, as is the keeping of secrets. In mid-May of 2019, Bert told Brooke he was going to see their family lawyer, John Spencer. Mark was going to take him. A timely phone call from John prompted Brooke to reveal she knew her dad was coming to see him. Thank goodness. If Bert hadn't told her about this meeting, John wouldn't have been able to discuss it with us, bound by client confidentiality. So, a few days after her dad's appointment, Brooke and I went to see John.
Well, I asked Mark to wait in our outer office while I spoke privately with Bert. First, I asked him, since Brooke knew about his appointment, would he be okay with me sharing what we talked about with you? Your dad said yes, that's fine.
That's good.
I also mentioned that since I've been your family lawyer for years, he might be worried about a conflict of interest. Your dad just waved that fear off as well, so I can fill you in about what we discussed.
Well, that's a relief.
For the record, our profession is required to meet with seniors such as your dad on their own, especially if someone other than their POA brings them to their appointment. This was obviously the case with Mark. We are also required to ask open questions related to the senior's level of cognition, their memory, and whether or not the person who brought them is coercing them to make changes, for instance, to their POA. Since Brooke's been Albert's POA since 1999, and because I've spent some time with both you and your dad as executors for your mum's will, I was naturally concerned that your dad was thinking of making this change.
Who's going to be his new POA?
Well, he was planning to choose Mark's wife, Donna.
Donna? But she doesn't know anything about finances.
Barely knows Bert.
Don't worry. We never got to changing it. We also discussed this so-called buyout plan, I think proposed by Mark, whereby you sell your half of the family home to Albert. I checked my paperwork, Brooke. Wasn't it only 4 months ago you put your dad's name on this same property?
Yes, it was.
Well, there were very few details to this plan, and I felt it was unwise to let this couple move in with him. And I told your dad just that. He was pretty vague anyway about how this plan should work.
Okay.
Now, when we went back to the outer office, your dad told Mark, "Oh, you can't be my POA because you're my caregiver." Mark immediately challenged me on this, saying he and his wife would be companions and that's okay. I told him it wasn't okay. Caregiver, companion, same thing. Mark then claimed I was in a conflict of interest. He had a certain arrogance about him. We got into a discussion of tenants in common and the difference between that and joint tenancy. Frankly, I don't think your dad understood that part of the conversation at all.
Not surprised.
So, after much thought, I've written a letter to your dad, in essence saying I don't think this buyout plan should be pursued since it's not in his best interests. Also, I told him I felt Mark was unduly influencing him. It's the first time I've ever done that in my 32 years of practicing law.
Oh, wow. That's unnerving.
Isn't that something we should tell Dr. Cooper?
I would appreciate that you don't share my letter with anyone else. Well, there's a little bit more I wanted to share with you. Bert left me a voicemail message to set up this appointment. Sounded like he was reading off a script. He said he wanted to discuss 3 things: changing his POA, your mum's will, and about this idea he had about buying Brooke out of the family home. Then he said goodbye, but failed to hang up the phone. Then I heard Bert say, "Was that all right?" And a male voice replied, "Yes, you covered it all." I now recognize that voice as being Mark.
Oh, no.
Unfortunately, John's refusal to allow us to share his letters stating Bert was unduly influenced by Mark was another example of confidentiality biting us in the ass.
Our dramatization continues in the next episode. But now we explore today's theme, the importance of estate planning and enduring powers of attorney. Charlotte Salomon is a lawyer and board member of the Estate Planning Council of Victoria.
Well, estate planning is important for many reasons. First of all, so there won't be any surprises. So everyone knows, and the person who's doing the estate plan knows what is going to happen after they pass away, and also what's going to happen if they lose capacity, because there will be a point in time where most of us will lose either physical or mental capacity, and we won't be able to make our own decisions. Something from banking and dealing with financial institutions and paying our bills to decisions as to where we're going to live as far as a old age home or a care facility, and what medical interventions are going to be made to prolong our lives. The advice I would give to my clients is that you need to have everyone on the same page. So if someone is coming to my office to prepare estate planning documents, one of the important documents is a power of attorney. And the power of attorney is the document that dictates what is to be done for your financial needs if you cannot take care of your financial needs yourself. And in a power of attorney document, we usually have them as enduring, which means that they are valid the moment that they are signed, as opposed to a springing power of attorney, which is only valid upon a certain event occurring, like a medical event. We usually do enduring power of attorneys to make sure that we have everything covered. What if a client is going on a trip somewhere, and let's say 4 months, and they're going to be away and someone has to pay their bills? Or what if they subsequently become incapacitated? So that's why someone would do a power of attorney and name people as their attorneys. And then the big question is, what happens to this document? I just told you that it's enduring, so it's valid the moment that it's signed. What happens to it? Do I just give it to the person that's, did the power of attorney, or give it to the attorneys? No. What I usually do with it is I put it in my safe at the law firm. We have a fire safe that stores all these important documents. And then I get the person who signs a power of attorney to basically sign a letter as to when this is to be released. So there's certain conditions that are on that letter. First of all, if they tell me to release it, saying, Charlotte, I'm going to Japan for 4 months, I won't be around, please release my power of attorney. Or in the case of a doctor telling me to release it, and this has happened before, where I get a call saying, yes, your client, Mr. So-and-so, well, you may not know this, and that client may appear normal to you, but that client suffers from frontal lobe dysfunction, and therefore that client is giving all their money away to overseas callers. So the power of attorney needs to be invoked to remove that client from their capacity to make their financial decisions because they don't have capacity to do so. So that's another scenario. And then the third is if I know it should be released. Like, for example, I usually have a good enough relationship with my clients. I keep in touch with them. I know when they're getting frail. I know when they're in the hospital. And it seems to me that this is the time that it should be released. So, and then I have absolute discretion. The clients do give me that to release the power of attorney if something happens, that they get hit by a bus or whatever. So it is kept in my safe until those conditions are met. And that's a bit controversial too, because obviously without a power of attorney, the person named as attorney cannot go to the bank and do the banking. So once a power of attorney is signed, just because it's signed doesn't mean that person has the authority. That person who's named as attorney has to receive the power of attorney signed, take it to the bank, and the bank will file it and know that this is the attorney that they are supposed to be dealing with instead of the person that made the power of attorney.
Today's episode features the voices of Susan Anderson as Nancy, Susan Wilkie as Brooke, Andy Dawson-Reed as Bert, Suniti Arens as Dr. Kupar, Jason Stevens as Mark, Matt Watson as Chris, and Phil Bailey as John. This is a production of Radio Sydney, with support from the Government of Canada's New Horizons program for seniors. The series was produced by Bill Collins, written by Nancy Miles and Brooke Cooper. Dramatization was directed by Matt Watson, with sound engineering by Bill Collins. I'm Barry Bowman. Please join us again